All right, let's look at the geometric mean stuff. Now, look at the notes for the beginning of the lesson. It just explains what the geometric mean is, right? Okay, and we're basically going to use, this proportion each time for my geometric mean. And so you can see how the proportions are set up in each of these and how I got my answer. All I did was cross multiply. Now, the significance of this is that when you have a right triangle like there is here, and you split the triangle with an altitude, you get three similar triangles, right? You get the big triangle here, and the altitude splits it into two little pieces here, right? You get the little triangle, the medium-sized triangle, and then you got the big triangle. Those are all similar, and you can make proportions out of these triangles, right? Now, it's going to be pretty hard for you to see and make proportions using the letters here. So there's a little proportion here, right, that uses both parts of the hypotenuse. You see the hypotenuse up here? It's broken up into two pieces, okay? And if we use those two parts of the hypotenuse, we could use the altitude, and that'll be our geometric mean. And every time I solve these problems, I'm going to use this one proportion here when I'm dealing with the altitude, okay? And so if you go through and read through the notes, that's the gist of it. Over here, you got the same concept, right? Except, right, when you get this proportion and this proportion, they use what's called the legs, okay? They use the hypotenuses, but they also use the legs, right? And so it's important that when you're looking at your right triangle, that you know where the legs are, you know where the hypotenuse is. And look, the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. When it says part of the hypotenuse, the altitude here breaks the hypotenuse into two little pieces, okay? And basically, you've got to decide, well, what leg am I using? If I'm using the leg on the right, then I'm going to use the hypotenuse and the part of the hypotenuse that's connected to that leg. So if you're using the leg on the left, this little hypotenuse AD is connected to the leg on the left. But if I decide to use the leg on the right side, I have to use DC. I've got to use that part of the hypotenuse. And so, these two fractions, not fractions, but these two proportions, they work on every right triangle using the similarity of these when the altitude breaks it up. And this is called the geometric mean. So, if you go through those notes, right, the whole gist of it is we're going to have to solve a problem like this, right? And if you notice, they're asking us for X, Y, and Z, okay? Now, I am going to always use either the altitude proportion or the leg proportion to figure out my answers here, okay? And watch how I do it. The important thing you need to do is you gotta label the triangle of which parts are you using? Are you using the altitude? Are you using the legs? All right, it says hypotenuse, then it's got parts of the hypotenuse. Listen, guys, this is pretty easy, okay? X over here is one leg. Z is another leg. Y represents the altitude, okay? And if you notice, the hypotenuse is the entire length of this entire triangle here, right? And the hypotenuse is, right, I'm going to say 13. How do I know that? Because 9 plus 4 is 13. That's the hypotenuse from here to there, right? And so, look, you've got one part of the hypotenuse over here. I'm going to write one part is 4, and the other part, the other part is 9. So when I use these two proportions here, depends on what I'm going to find. Why don't we do the altitude first? The altitude is easy. It's Y, and we're going to use this proportion here. So basically what's going to end up happening is the altitude is Y. See where the altitude is? I'm going to put the altitude as Y and Y. And then it says part of the hypotenuse and part of the hypotenuse. You have two parts. You got to use both of them. Okay? And then basically, I'm just going to cross multiply and solve this, right? So I'm going to get, let's see, Y times Y is Y squared. 4 times 9 is 36. Take the square root of it, and basically Y equals 6. I figured out that the altitude was 6 on the first triangle. All right? Okay? Easy. Okay? Now, let's solve for X. X is a leg. That means I'm going to use, right? I'm going to use this proportion. I'm going to use the leg. It says x is the leg. Okay, well, let's put the x there and there. Those are called the geometric means. Y over here is the geometric mean. That's the altitude. X is the geometric mean over here. It's one of the legs. Now, notice, what do you want? You want the hypotenuse. That means the entire hypotenuse here. How big was it? It was 13. And then it says part of the hypotenuse. Well, look, if I'm using the leg for x, right? What part of the hypotenuse is attached to this leg? Well, it's on this triangle here, so it's 4. If I'm trying to find x, I'm going to use the part of 4. And basically, that's my proportion. I just got to go through and I got to cross multiply this, right? And I got to solve it. Okay, I'm going to get x squared. I'm going to get my calculator over here. What's 13 times 4? It's 52. Okay, that's not a nice number. What the heck is the square root of 52? Well, I'm going to pop it into my calculator. The square root, right? The square root of 52 is coming up as 7.21111. Round to 2 decimal places. That'll probably be the safest bet that you have. So x is 7.2. Right? 7.21. That's it. Now listen, I gotta find z. Z is what? Z is the other leg. I'm gonna use the same proportion here, except look, I'm gonna put z as the legs. All right? There's z as my leg. And you know what? Again, I need the hypotenuse and I need the part of the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the whole entire thing. It's 13. Okay? What's the part you're going to use? Well, what's the part that's connected to z here? All right? 9. So basically, that's where I use the 9. Cross multiply. I don't know what 13 times 9 is. I'm going to use my calculator. Okay? It's 117. I got to take the square root of that. I have no idea what the square root of 117 is. All right? But I believe it's 10 point something. Pop it into my calculator. It's 10.81. And actually, I'm going to round it to 10.82. Done. I basically used the idea of the geometric mean with the altitude and the legs, and I was able to actually use these two proportions, and I could figure out any pieces. Okay? Now, since we're here, why don't we try the next one? Okay? I'm going to try the next one. I need a lot of room over here. All right? But I'm basically going to do the same thing. Now, here's a little problem that I've got. Let's look. The entire hypotenuse from here to here is 10. You guys see that? Okay? And so, right, they're also giving me one of the legs. This is the hypotenuse here, 10. This is the leg, 6. The other leg is z. And the altitude is y. Now, you guys have to be smart about this. I can't solve for y right now. If I wanted to do the altitude, y, right, I basically had to use the y, and I had to use both parts of the hypotenuse. I don't have either part. One of the parts is x, and the other part is, right, blank. So I can't actually use the altitude to figure what y is. So I'm actually going to have to work a little bit backwards. I can't do z either because z needs one of the parts of the hypotenuse. I don't have it. So, do you see how you have a leg over here as 6? And you have the hypotenuse as 10? And see that part over there is x? Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to use this proportion here. Right? Okay? This proportion says use the leg. Right? I'm going to use 6 as my leg. I'm going to put that in both corners. That's the geometric mean. Right? Use the entire hypotenuse. That's 10. And use the part of the hypotenuse that's attached to the leg. That's easy. That's x. I can basically go through and I can figure out what x is using this proportion over here. Okay? So I'm going to go through and cross multiply. I'm going to get, right, 10x times 36. All right? That's going to end up being 3.6. I just figured out that this piece here is 3.6. Okay? So I figured out what x is now. I actually need to figure out the other part of the hypotenuse here. If I know x is 3.6, I could easily get the other part. All right? You know how I'm going to do that? What's 10 minus 3.6? I'm going to double check that on my calculator so I don't make any mistakes. That's 6.4. That's the other part, right? So that means this is 6.4. Now that I've got that part there, 6.4, I actually can use that to figure out the altitude, and I can also use that to figure out the leg of z. Why don't we do the altitude? The altitude is y. I'm going to use this proportion up here, altitude and altitude, y and y. And then I need both parts of the hypotenuse. I figured out that the first part was 3.6. Figured out that the other part was 6.4. Y squared equals, I do not know what 3.6 times 6.4 is. It's 23.04. Okay, great. I gotta square root it, square root it. What is the square root of 23.04? No clue. Actually, it works out pretty nicely. It works out to be 4.8. So I figured out that x was 3.6, figured out that y was 4.8, and so that's what the altitude is, 4.8. All right? Okay? So this was the altitude. Okay? This was the leg, and I'll write that it was the left leg. And now look, I'm actually going to figure out the right leg. You guys notice that the right leg is z. You see it over here? It's z. All right. So that means my proportion is going to go like this. It's going to be z and z. Now I need the entire hypotenuse, which was 10. And I need the part of the hypotenuse that's connected to the leg of z. That's 6.4. Okay? There you go. That's easy. That's z squared and 64. And when you take the square root of that, okay, that's 8. So I basically got z equals 8, x equals 3.6, and y equals 4.8. All right? So all I did was I used the same proportions. Now, the issue is that I gotta fool around with it a little bit, and I gotta, try to see if I can figure out what x, y, and z are. And you don't have to do them in order. You could do them in whatever order you want, whatever pieces you have. All right? Okay? Now, let's do this one right here. Okay? Y is a leg. Okay? Z is also a leg. Look at this. X is one of the parts of the hypotenuse. The other part is 12. The altitude is 5. You got to know what the pieces are. You can't use these two proportions unless you know what pieces that you have on the triangle. Well, that's pretty easy. Now, I'm actually going to come over here and write out that the hypotenuse is this part plus that part. That's x plus 12, right? Just so you guys know that that's x plus 12, you might need it. But you know what? I'm actually going to go through and figure out what x is. X is one of the parts. I have the other part. And look, I have the altitude. I could use this first proportion up here. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to set up the altitude proportion. This is the altitude. Well, the altitude goes 5. It goes in these two corners, just like it says up here, altitude and altitude. And then I need both parts of the hypotenuse. I got x and 12. Right? That's pretty easy. I could easily solve that, right? Okay, it's going to be 12x and 25. And when I divide that, that's not going to be perfect. Well, when I do 25 divided by x here, I get 2.08. I'm actually going to leave it like that. 2.08. That's the x part, 2.08. So I got 2.08. I figured out what x is. You guys want to do y? I need the entire hypotenuse. This was 2.08. That plus that is 14.08. So now I know that the entire hypotenuse here is 14.08. I'm going to need to use it. I'll need to use it for z and for y on both of the legs. All right, here, let's do the legs. We'll do the one on the left first. That's y. Set it up as y across from y. We need the hypotenuse, which is 14.08. And we need the part of the hypotenuse that's attached to the leg of y. That's 2.08. You guys just got to cross multiply these. I have no idea what that is. So grab a calculator. 14.08 times 2.08. Okay. I get some funky number, 29.2864. So be it. You need to take the square root of it when you, right, cross multiply it out. And I'm going to do the square root of 29.2864. All All right, I get 5.41. That's rounded. So it's 5.41. I got that. Let's do the other leg. Here, this is the left leg. This is the right leg. The right leg is Z. I need the entire hypotenuse, which is 14.08. And I need the part connected to Z. What's the part connected to Z? It's 12. Cross multiply this guy. I don't know what it is. I'm going to get Z squared equals 14.08 times 12. That's 168.96. Square root that guy. I have no idea what the square root of it is. All right, it's 12. Okay, I have to round it up to 13 because it's 12.998. So round it to 2 decimal places. It's 13. Okay, so there's that one. So I got that down. Now we got to do this little, we got to go through and do this little triangle that I have over in this corner over here. Let's see what we got. Look, it's upside down. Y is one leg, 9 is the other leg, the altitude is Z, and the hypotenuse is X plus 3. Okay? All right. Well, the entire hypotenuse is X plus 3. One part is X, the other part is 3, and the one leg is 9. Okay, don't have enough information for Z with the altitude. I can't use 2 variables together. I got Y as the left leg, can't use it. I need to figure out what X is first. Look, I got 9 as the leg on the right. That's 9. I got the part over here, and I need the whole. All right, that's pretty easy. Let's do that. Let's do the right leg. The right leg, 9 and 9. Those are my geometric means, right? If you get stuck, always go back. Use this, leg and leg. You need the entire hypotenuse here and the part, okay? What's the part that's connected to 9? 3 goes on the bottom. What's the entire hypotenuse? It's X plus 3. And you guys just got to go through, cross multiply, and solve that. It's pretty easy. That's 3x plus 9, right, equals, right, 81. Then this is going to be 3x, right, 72. And I got to divide 72 by 3. I have no idea what that is, right? I don't know why I didn't know that. That's easy. It's 24. That means x is 24. Go back and plug it in here, 24. So now I know that x here is 24. What's the entire hypotenuse? It's 24 plus 3. It's 27. All right? I know that's a lot of information to write down, but I can't really get in there. So x is 24. Let's do y next. Y is a leg. Y is the left leg. So that's going to be y and y. And I need the entire hypotenuse, which is 27. And I need the leg attached to y. I figured out that that was 24. So that's y squared. Don't know what 27 times 24 is. 648. Don't know what the square root of that is. The square root of 648 is, all right, square root of 648 is, all right, it's 25.46. Figured out what y is. All right, I got that. And now I need z. I got no more room to write. I'm going to squeeze z in over here. Z is the altitude. Here, let's do the altitude. Z and z goes in those corners. And I need both parts. It's 24 and 3. Okay, what the heck is 24 times 3? 72. What's the square root of 72? I have no idea. It's 8.49. Wow, that's a lot of work I just did. Okay? So listen, quick reminder. You need to, you need to memorize these 2 proportions. One deals with the altitude, one deals with the leg. B, you need to label your triangle with the leg, the altitude, the hypotenuse, and then you can use these, right? these numbers that represent the hypotenuse, the altitude, the leg, you could use them in the proportions and you could figure out any missing piece that you're here. Listen, I put a lot of practice problems on the homework. I gave you guys all the answers. Good luck. There's also something on IXL, right? See if you guys can try it.